Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is just profoundly universal, the maps of a biography. Throughout our lives, we all experience these invisible, deeply internal transitions. And to make sense of them, human beings across literally all cultures rely on this beautiful metaphor of rituals. So let's explore how these rites of passage give shape to our lives and how they create a visible framework for the milestones we're all inevitably going to cross.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the meaning of rites of passage, then move chronologically right through the human experience, from birth and first belonging, to paths to adulthood, marriage, and finally sickness and death. Then we'll wrap the whole shebang up by looking at how rituals are adapting in our modern world.
So part 1, the meaning of rites of passage.
So, the crucial point here is, why do we even need these frameworks in the first place? Well, think about it. Internal changes, like becoming an adult or taking on the responsibilities of a partner, they're completely invisible, right? We need a way to signal that shift to our community and, honestly, to ourselves. When anthropologists look at these practices objectively, they identify a classic three-part structure. First up is separation, literally stepping away from your old status. Next is transition. Actually, it's more like a liminal space, where you're caught right between identities. And finally, reintegration, where you return to the community fully acknowledged in this entirely new role.
And this brilliantly illustrates how we can actually map these transitions out chronologically across a single human lifespan. From birth all the way to the end of life, religions use these specific windows to structure time, to provide us with a profound sense of belonging, and to help communities manage life's inevitable crises and joys.
Moving right along to Section 2, Birth and First Belonging.
Obviously, a birth is a biological event, but for human society, it's so much more than that. It's a social and spiritual beginning that weaves a child right into a complex web of relationships. Now, what's really interesting about this is how, even within a single tradition like Christianity, the mechanism of that belonging can deeply contrast. Take infant baptism. It focuses entirely on unearned grace. The community blesses the child way before they can speak for themselves. Contrast that directly with believers' baptism. That pivots entirely unconscious, personal testimony. The individual has to be old enough to understand and make that definitive commitment themselves.
And across global traditions, we see just a huge diversity in establishing this early identity. The Hindu Namakarana, for example, connects the child to the cosmic order through naming, while the Islamic Akika often focuses on gratitude and feeding others. We also see deeply physical rituals that act as permanent identity markers. The Jewish Brit Milah on the 8th day signifies a long-standing religious covenant, and the Islamic Khitan is closely linked to purity and prophetic tradition. And while these are profoundly important religious bonds, it's worth noting they also spark complex, ongoing ethical debates today, balancing bodily autonomy with religious freedom.
Which brings us to Section 3, Paths to Adulthood.
So as kids hit adolescence, the biological process of growing up collides head-on with a community's demand for active participation. Whether we're talking about the bar or bat mitzvah in Judaism or confirmation in Protestant and Catholic traditions, let's be clear. These are absolutely not just fun family parties. They are the culmination of intense preparation. This is the moment where youths become visible religious subjects. The community is looking right at them and saying, "We expect you to carry this tradition forward."
And there's a really delicate balance families face here. When done well, these rituals foster deep self-confidence. But if they become mere exercises in social conformity, they can create immense pressure. The ultimate goal isn't to pretend doubts don't exist. Not at all. It's to give young people the tools to navigate those doubts responsibly, right within a protected, supportive space.
Let's move to Section 4 and see how this builds. Marriage, covenant, and promise. As young adults transition into partnership, private, romantic love is transformed into a public responsibility. And traditions bind people together in incredibly different ways. A sacrament, like in Roman Catholicism, views marriage as a visible, unbreakable sign of divine grace. On the flip side, traditions like Islam with the nikah or Judaism with the ketubah frame marriage as a highly structured social and religious contract. They very specifically lay out the rights and duties of both individuals.
Think of weddings as these massive public negotiations of norms. Symbols like the Jewish chuppah or the sacred fire in a Hindu vivaha, they aren't just pretty decorations. They are active witnesses to the creation of a new home. But today, these ancient traditions are constantly bumping up against modern realities. Interreligious marriages, as well as same-sex partnerships, are representing a huge modern test for how institutions balance historical tradition with individual autonomy and civil equality.
And now, Section 5, Farewell, Sickness and Death. This is ultimately the climax of the human life cycle. Facing mortality is the one experience we literally all share. And when people are just overwhelmed by grief and become completely speechless, rituals step in. Practices like the Jewish Shiva or the Islamic Janazah, they don't magically erase the pain, but they do provide a necessary container for the chaos. They structure time, they guide people on what to do, and they ensure profound, unwavering dignity for both the dying and the dead.
The focus of these farewells shifts so beautifully across cultures. We go from the meticulous physical respect of Islamic washing, to the Hindu rites of Antyeshti, focusing on that transition, to the Buddhist emphasis on transferring merit and mindfulness. And a huge part of this today is how these ancient traditions have to integrate into modern medicine. Palliative care is increasingly recognizing that end-of-life care is about so much more than medicine. It's about hospitals making space to accommodate diverse religious burial timelines and vital spiritual practices.
Which brings us to a really fascinating question. With all this medical advancement and societal change, are traditional rituals actually disappearing in our modern secular world? Take a second and just think about what you see happening in your own community.
Let's answer that in Section 6, Rituals in the Modern World.
Well, spoiler alert, rituals aren't dying at all. They are simply mutating. To ground this in some hard facts, the 2021 UK census illustrates a massive demographic shift. For the very first time, less than half the population identified as Christian, landing at 46%, while the no religion category surged to 37%. But here's the catch. No religion does not mean no rituals. It just changes how and why we practice them.
So how exactly is this modern ritual market adapting? We can break it down into 4 steps. First up, secularization. Institutions lose their automatic authority, so our choices become a lot freer. Second is pluralization, meaning diverse religious and secular forms now coexist side by side. Third, we see intense individualization. People want rituals tailored to perfectly fit their personal biographies. And finally, that leads to hybrid forms. We're seeing incredible blends now, humanist naming ceremonies, digital mourning pages, or weddings that mix ancient religious symbols with entirely modern, secular values.
At the end of the day, modern humans are constantly trying to strike a very delicate balance. If we just go through the motions, form without personal meaning feels completely empty. But on the flip side, personal meaning without any established form, that can leave us totally lost when a real crisis hits. We still need those maps.
Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to reflect on. As our world rapidly changes and old institutions give way to these new hybrid forms, how will you choose to map the milestones of your own biography? I hope this exploration gave you some fascinating insights to consider. Until next time,